Hello, my name is Susan Kraft, and this is Talk Art, a program funded by Accent Arts of Palo Alto, suppliers of fine art supplies and framing, and Silicon Valley Open Studios, SVOS. Every year, during the first 3 weekends in May, more than 300 Silicon Valley artists open up their studios to the public. This is a free event which lets you discover some exciting new artistic talent, or you can get up close and personal with some of your favorite artists. You can find out more about Open Studios by browsing to svos.org. And you can also find out more about Accent Arts at accentarts.com. Today, we're going to talk to Judy Gittlesohn, artist, teacher, and a golden working artist. Let's welcome Judy to Talk Art. Thank you, Judy. Thanks for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
To talk with us at Talk Art. Now, according to my sources, as I mentioned earlier, you have 3 personas that you give us here in the Bay Area, in San Francisco Bay Area. First, I'd like to talk to you, or I'd like you to talk to me, and give me your speech about golden paints.
All right. Well, thank you, Susan. So, I am what is called a working artist for golden paints. I'm a professional artist, and I've been extensively trained in how to introduce and even further teach people about how to work with acrylics, golden acrylics. And they offer this enormous product line. These are several of the gels that are offered.
And those are just the gels?
These are just the gels, and this is just part of the gels offering. So you can imagine, oh, I'm a painter and I want to use some texture or some surfaces, and there are 50 options. How do you begin?
Wow. 50 options.
At least. I mean, this is a smattering, and every other month I move on to get a new gel. So with the gels, you can put them underneath the paints.
Okay.
Okay? Or you can, and I'm going to change slides here, you can mix the paints together with the gels. So I do these things called lecture demonstrations to universities, art stores, and art groups.
Art groups. So if you have an art group out there, anybody in the audience here who has, many of you belong to art groups, if you'd like to have Judy come talk to you, grab her when we're all done. So.
And there are 45 working artists in the world, and
in the world,
in the world, and we're like this, where we paint and we use the products, and then we teach other people how to work with them.
Golden is an American product, right? A lot of art products come out of England or France, but this is
in upstate New York.
Okay.
And they're on this little farm in New York. It's really pastoral, and it's surreal because there's this big manufacturing plant there, and they're really available to artists, and they're an artist-driven company, and they have all this connection with artists. One of their cool products was made for the movie by Ed Harris about Jackson Pollock.
Oh, I've heard that.
Yeah, that's a great story, and it's called tar gel.
And that's it right there.
Right here, we have tar gel, back to tar gel, right here.
Yeah.
And so in real life, Jackson Pollock used automotive paints, and when he was doing this scene that he was splattering on glass for Life magazine, in the film, they redid that, but they couldn't use automotive paint because they would have been noxious and curled under movie lights. So Golden crafted something that's now on the line, tar gel, and you can really throw it and it stays on your brush for a long time. It's really cool. So how I work with these paints is I do these things called lecture demonstrations, and then I also have workshops for artists. So if you wanted to come to a workshop by me, I could teach you how to do all the gels, materials, paints. And what I figured out as an artist is that I take an existing artist, so I'm going to show you a painting of Matisse here. We know Matisse, a lot of us know Matisse. This is a painting by Matisse. And then I will use Matisse as a starting off point. And thank you. And I will introduce several golden products. This happens to be by my students. This is by a student, and this is black gesso, which is a very interesting product, and with paints on top of it. And here's another.
I'll take it over here.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I forgot about that part.
Okay.
And here's another student doing black gesso. This is by a young fellow named Joseph.
Okay.
And each week I introduce another painter, and here is...
And this is the same one? This is the Matisse painting?
That's from a Matisse painting.
His version of it. Okay.
Yes. And this is a painter, Elizabeth Catlett, who's an American-born painter.
Put it down.
Put it down?
No, I meant it. What helps us a lot if you
Okay.
put it against the table. It's a lot easier for
All right,
for
okay,
camera
cool.
people.
Feel free to direct
Excuse
me. And I'm going to show you a painting by Glenn, who used Elizabeth Catlett as a launching off point. And Glenn is working here
Excuse me.
with the new products, which are called open paints. And many of us
I've heard
know
about
about
open paints.
acrylics, which are cool and fast drying, and acrylics are great because they're miscible. You can wash your brushes with water, they're low toxicity. The new open paints, which I gave you a tube of right here, are slow drying.
These right here, this right here.
Correct.
Where are you? There you are.
Well done.
Okay. Okay, slow drying. All right.
So for a little comparison chart, last chart, or one of the last charts, we have the heavy body regular acrylics,
Okay.
and the open. Now this is at 8 p.m., 8 p.m., 10 p.m., nothing, 10 p.m., next day, and right now I could still work these paints. They're
Look at
still
that.
wet.
Look
This
at
is
that.
3 days later.
Wow. Okay. I don't think I can even do that with my oil paints, to tell you the truth. Unless
Really?
you have it really thick. Yeah. I really. Well, maybe I've never tried.
Okay.
3 days later, I've squished into my oil paints, but.
But
yeah.
what the open do,
Well, when do they dry?
well, they'll dry eventually. No, they dry like in 3 days, sort of. They'll be cured. You can reopen them with
Well, this
a thinner.
is really thick too.
Yes, that's a thicker
On purpose.
application. Right,
Okay.
right.
You can reopen them. What does that mean?
With a there's an open thinner, so you can make them workable. You can work them again by applying the thinner, but they do finally cure. But what they offer you is the ability to do a lot of blending and glazing, and they're marvelous paints.
Okay.
So
Very
that's
nice. Are you done with this? All right, I guess that's the last of it. Okay. All right, so if anybody wants to write any of this down, I don't think there's anything to really write down there except that it's open. And I'm going to show you this here. This, Patricia, can you grab this one right here? This is Golden Indian Yellow. Oh, I guess not. Okay. Anyway, this is Indian Yellow. Can we talk about this for a minute here? Because this is really interesting. Indian Yellow is a hue, though. So there's a difference between hue and
pigments.
Pigments.
So Indian yellow is a very old pigment that they don't make anymore. So Indian yellow was originally made from, ready for this? Cows who were fed mango leaves and dehydrated and collected their
Dehydrated urine, not
urine.
cows.
Right. No, they dehydrated the cow, concentrated urine,
Oh, that is so mean.
created the pigment. So we
So
can't.
that's what you. So if we were to buy Indian yellow pigment, it's from abused cows.
Correct. So now, in order to get this fabulous color, which Indian yellow is a great color.
Did you guys know this? Sorry, you can see the looks on my face going, what?
Yes. So no, they don't
But not
make that.
anymore.
No more. But
It's
now they
illegal,
make a
okay.
hue, which is a combination of several pigments to make a color that
And you
is
can get it in open.
right.
Great.
Yes. Okay.
Yay.
Shall we move on?
I think we should move on. Now we're going to talk about your work.
Okay.
Okay. You've got work that we were going to talk about. But first, I went to your show. You had a new show a couple of weeks ago, and
Right.
it was a wonderful show. And all your art was in this big open room, and you had a wonderful poem. Now, we have a video of you reciting your poem with all of this work. So, Marty, can you bring up the video of Judy's poem and her artwork? I don't know where it's coming up.
Mumbo jumbo. Something and air, unexplained, firm, fixed. Whoa, juicy noise goes round, in and withdraw, pause, head down pink spell. Bounce melodious nature's ear off kilter, dark. An echo here, tumbling puff, puff, slumber puff, inverse and enter round, round nothing a shiny gem. Time and time again we wish and cry.
That was beautiful, Judy. Thank you
Thank
very much
you.
for bringing that here.
So as a painter, I work in series, and oftentimes I'll morph these series. So right now I'm working on a series called SWADDLE the Girl, and it's about my daughter who's turning 13, and we'll show some paintings from that. But when I get the group complete, I'll write a poem. And so I take these paintings and I narrative them. I make them a linear fashion, in a way, by a poem.
We have some of your work here also that we can look at on the screen, and you can talk about them more than just a word or two that's part of a poem.
Excellent.
So would you like to do that?
Yes, please.
Okay. Marty, can you bring those up for us? The first one is called Complexity of a Tear.
Yes. And the
there it is.
Complexity of a Tear is a painting that I was considering how, as an emotion, a tear is a point in time where it is a complex operation. It is not just, oh, I'm sad. It's almost the confluence of fear, sad, joy, but it's a multitude of things. And so when I began this painting, I worked on the many planes of it, and then I wrapped it softly, so it's got many layers. The Complexity of a Tear is also a portrait of a tear, and I was going to, I'll use this as a lead-in point, that I'm a portrait painter. And I take something like a tear and I create a portrait of this tear. And you could see that the tear was isolated. It is by itself, and therefore it's a portrait.
And when you said you wrap it, that means that you first put very simple planes.
Correct.
Around the whole, both sides,
right.
So you can see through the tear.
Right.
And then you wrapped it in color so it becomes opaque, but you've got the roundness.
And I was looking at a crystal and seeing how a crystal is fractionalized, and I'm not certain if I got the word right, but how you can see light through it in many directions, almost like a diamond. And then the smoothness of how it gels and forms. And so I was working on that.
Amazing. I don't think I've spent so much time on a tear. Even considering just this dialogue about that you and I have just had now. So that must have been an amazing experience to spend that much time on a tear for one painting. I think we should move on to the other. You've got a lot of paintings. I don't want to run out of time. So can we bring up oh, there it is. All right, the Seed of Light. So beautiful painting.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the Seed of Light, I do a lot of simple forms that you can see, and the Seed of Light is the idea of a object in its trajectory. The seed is moving, and it's moving at the speed of light, or at the speed of light. And it's also, you see beneath it the little land, and it's got maybe a shadow, but it's moving quite quickly. The shadow is beneath it and passing. And so the seeds, that it was kind of the beginning of the series of a SWADDLE the Girl, that the seed was forming the idea.
Now, in your background, you come from a pretty classically trained background. You as a child, I think you told me as a child you were into you made up your own architectural drawings, and then you went to college in San Francisco.
Right.
And
so
art school in San Francisco.
I was known as the animal girl as a kid, and I had chickens and rabbits and ducks, and I wanted a goat. And I lived near my uncle, who was an attorney, and my uncle said, if you get a goat, I'll sue you. So I started drawing plans of these farms and houses, and then with...
Because you wanted your own place.
Right.
Away from your uncle.
Well, I love my uncle. I love the guy, but
but the goat had to be away from your uncle.
Right. And he had a goat as a kid and didn't like the goat, I think, something like that. So, but I drew these plans, and I had reams of notebooks. So floor plans and family plans and farm plans led me into architecture school. And then in architecture school, I found that it was a bit confining, and I sort of bristled on the edges of convention and structure. And so I left architecture school for art school, and I ended up in San Francisco and went to the Art Institute.
To ended up.
Right.
To end up
Yeah.
really, yeah.
So, and I have always used the architecture, and I'll show you how I use that in my work. The next painting is slightly architectural.
The next painting we've got, it's yam.
Think.
No. Oh, I'm sorry. Think. Yes, think. Oh, there it is. Just think. Linear, and I've never seen such a fractionalized linear piece by you.
Well, I guess, thank you. What is cool about this, or what, I don't know if it's cool, but what I do a lot is that I overlay things. So like Complexity of the Tear, hearkening back to that conversation, here I've got the spiral in the movement in this direction overlaying with the word. And so You can go in and out. You can take one thing forward and one thing back, and you can see the coloration, and you can see the path of the spiral.
Okay, and you called it Think because?
It says the word think.
Okay. The next one we've got is going to be, oh, it's the same Think, but this is how large
and
it is.
I just wanted to show you how large I paint.
Large.
So that's me in front of Think.
Yeah.
And this one is yam and yellow, and I did a whole series called Pear and a Yam, and the two pieces that I'm showing you today are a yam and yellow. And a Pear and a Yam was a story, a portrait, and a relationship. And a pear in language could be seen as a couple or a pair. And a yam.
Well, let's look at the next one, golden. Marty, can you bring up golden yam? Okay.
Here's a golden yam. And a yam was a play on words for I am. So it was a funny wording. So I often work with words and images.
Okay. Very well. Harkens back to your harkens is your word.
Yeah.
Harkens. It leads back to your poetry, and I also do poetry. I think a lot of artists do poetry. Art and poetry are very well connected, as well as music and all the other arts. But we're trying to say something.
Yeah, we're communicating.
Yeah,
and we're communicating.
Level.
Right, right. And words work. And oftentimes I'll put words in a painting too. So like Think, where I have words in a painting. This final painting that we're going to show is
Swaddle the Girl. Here it is.
Swaddle the Girl.
Is this a portrait of your daughter?
It is, and these are the three graces and a few animals leading her into young womanhood.
Wonderful. So now, portraits. Here, this is a portrait, and I've met your daughter, and I see a similarity, but as a classical portrait artist that I am, in some doorway of my artwork, that is not a portrait. So if you just said to somebody, I'm a portrait, and they say, oh, great, can you paint my grandmother, right? And you come up with a stylized piece like that, they'd say, no, I wanted a portrait, more picture-like.
So I am a portrait painter in that it is representational. It's not realistic. But when you look at that, you can go, oh, it's a human. Oh, it's a girl. Oh, it's a kid. Oh, it's a face. And I'm a portrait painter in that I deify. I give more attention to the object. If I'm painting a cup, you can see, oh, it's a cup, and it's isolated. It's lifted up. It's monumentalized, because you could see how large my paintings are.
Right.
I do where I herald the object, and I give it more attention. I take it out of its surrounding, and therefore it's a portrait.
I see. Okay. All right. So you make something, because you simplify the background, you simplify, well, it's what portraits normally do anyway. Usually they have this faded kind of background, but you really,
draw attention to it. I shine a spotlight on it. And we were talking about how in this world where it's very busy, it's very image-driven, a lot of noise, a lot of attention for just being in the world, I take an object and I give it a little time, and I give it a little room. And when you're looking at these paintings, I hope that you go, oh, a cup, oh, an egg.
Which we love and we use. It's
yeah,
very useful.
right.
What would life be without cups or eggs? Unfortunately, we're going to have to move on to the next thing we want to talk about, because you have so much packed into your art life. And I know you've got people here that know parts of you from different areas. And so we're going to bring up the next set, and that is going to be about your art for well-beings. And I think we've got a website for that as well. And we've got Art Right Away as well. And if you could, at some point, also bring up the...
Well, let's stay on this one just for a moment. So Art for Well-Beings, I'm going to tell you about in a minute. This is a project. This is a painting called Anytime, and you can see written Anytime. And this is a project I've developed called Paint by Puzzle. And I outline across several boards, and this piece is 30 inches by 24.
And 9 pieces are there. So.
Right, 9 pieces. And there could have been 9 contributors. Each person paints their square. So what I do as an educator and as a director of Art for Well-Beings is I hold the individual sacred. and I give them their distinct area, and then I create collaborative works out of out of many individuals. But it's always about, it's not always about, but it's about keeping my area safe. So I create a very safe, very loving, very supportive environment where no one's going to touch your work, but when you're brought together, you create something that's larger than just your contribution.
So it's more than the sum of the pieces.
Right.
The whole is more than the sum of the
whole is more than the sum of the, or the whole is the sum of the individuals.
Well, yeah, but it becomes something more than just
Right.
one small little piece.
Exactly,
So,
right.
Like a community, like a well-formed community.
Right, right.
Okay, and so this community of people
Yeah.
that you work with, they're all more of like on the fringe.
I think that's a fair way to put it. I work with
Yeah.
people with developmental disabilities, at-risk youth, and people recovering from illness or injury, and typical people like yourself and myself who are interested in the art. So I create these paint by puzzles out of whatever souls are nearby. And it's a really amazing little center, and I have a location at 2460 Park Boulevard in Palo Alto.
And it's close to the corner of Park and California,
right.
which is right down the street from Accent Arts.
Yes.
Turns out.
Exactly, right.
I
Very
love
good.
that part of downtown. This is in Palo Alto, and both Judy and I live in Palo Alto, which is the center of Silicon Valley. Thus, the Silicon Valley Open Studios is connected to us.
Right.
But there you are, right near the train station, right near Accent Arts, and you bring anybody that is part of this community that you're
Right.
developing into your space.
And what I'm working on doing is having an inclusive environment where the premises or the tenants are expression, and that you're working on experiencing art as a form of expression, and that the style is supportive, again, and positive. And so I have some pictures of the studio if you want to
Oh,
pull
sure.
those up.
Okay. Let's see. We've got Marty. Sorry, Marty. How can you please bring up? I think it's number 3 of C3. There
Thank
you
you,
go.
Susan. So this is in the studio, and this is with artists.
It's your studio.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. And this is where I do the workshops, and I have different classes, and they're all on the website, and I welcome the community to come and visit.
Oh, very good. And do you want to look at the other ones too? We've got
Sure.
4 and 5 of your artists. There you go. Janet is over there.
And she's doing a paint by puzzle painting. She's putting a paint by puzzle painting together.
Oh, very good, very good. And then we've got another one as well, number 5. There she's Cindy and Tracy. And after we look at these folks here, do you want to talk about
Let's show
Cindy
the
and
next
Tracy
one
now?
so you can see
the
what's...
next one too.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 6, we've got an actual piece that they worked on. There it is, that Cindy and Tracy put together. Right?
Yes, very
okay,
good.
very
And then
good.
let's just show the next slide so we can keep going through this.
Okay. We've
The
got
next
there's a
piece is called How to Ride the Bus, and this was a book that I made with Abilities United, formerly called CAR.
which is part of Palo Alto's community.
Right. They serve 2,000 people with developmental disabilities, and this is an occupational handbook on how to ride the bus, and it's done by the artists of Abilities United.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And you organized all. It was your idea, and then
I
you
got
pulled
funding
it
to
together?
do this,
Great.
and I had a show, and it's a really nice project.
Wonderful, wonderful. And you've got there's one more piece we want to show. There it is.
And this is a book that was commissioned by the Children's Library of Palo Alto, and this is called This is Palo Alto, and it's a coloring book, and it was a great history trip through Palo Alto, so I learned a lot about Palo Alto doing this.
Yeah, and you could do this for other cities if you are you interested in doing this again?
I've been approached for other cities. by
Oh, okay.
doing-
Are you
yeah.
interested in doing this
Yes,
some more?
yes,
Okay,
I'd
all
love
right.
to.
So if anybody's from another city out here, okay. Now we have some pieces here. Would you like to show any of these?
Sure, I brought some paint by puzzle pieces so you could see them up close and see what they look like. How's that looking?
Can you get to it? Okay, there we go.
And so it's a very simple
This
process.
over here a little bit. Oops,
Okay,
sorry.
oops.
Right angle. There,
There
you
we go.
Okay.
So this
Good,
is a
good.
bowl, and it's very simple, and I'm creating a kit of this, so you can possibly, by airtime, order
bring
a
up
kit.
another one?
Okay,
Let's see another one.
next one. And should I be handing these to you?
Oh, it doesn't matter.
just
I guess pretty soon, because otherwise you're going to put exactly where you had the other one.
There
you
we
go.
go. How am I doing?
Okay. Beautiful.
Good.
You're such a pro. Can everyone out there?
All right, hello in TV
Here we
land.
go.
Okay.
Here we go. On black foam.
And I
pro.
work with a lot of organizations, and these are all from different places, and this is
Very nice. And what did you call this particular
This
puzzle
one
piece?
is called Spring Trees, and I did
Okay.
this with an organization called Friends of Children with Special Needs in San Jose.
And so let's close with this for a moment. Then we've got not close, but close on this segment because I
Okay.
do want to talk to you about you're so animated and you have so many interesting things and segments and facets of who you are. Not to say about your family and the people you work with, but what are you going to do in the future? You're going to continue with all of these things? Do you have some other place you're going to go, or?
Well, Art for Well-Beings is just bursting. It just feels like people are just drawing to it, so it's really an exciting time for Art for Well-Beings. For myself as an artist, we talked about how I'm a portrait painter and I isolate and deify, and I have found that recently, with the influence of several other painters that I've been studying, which is so cool, I am beginning to bedevil these objects and these portraits.
Bedevil them.
And bedevil them, I mean, look at them as more parts of themselves. So I feel like I've gotten into these, I'm sorry to use my hand so much, but I've gotten into these portraits, and I feel like I'm going like that with them, whatever that is. I feel like I'm looking at
bursting them open?
Bursting them open and looking at their sort of internal energy, their components, rather than, oh, as a solid form, I'm looking at the guts.
So you're going to abstract them?
Yeah, I feel like I'm going in an abstract direction, which is really exciting for me because I've been so formed and this is the thing and sort of concrete. And now I feel like there's this new chaos, which is so exciting to be, as an artist, to be on this like cusp of like, whoa, where is my work going?
Wow, wow, it's really, it's when you were talking like this, I was thinking of in mathematical terms, because in mathematics, you can look at the inverse of something to do a Fourier transform on it, or do an inverse, and then you bring up the word chaos, and I thought, well, that's also part of a mathematical formulation as well, chaos theory, which I don't really know much about, but I certainly know about Fourier transform and inverse.
All right. And I think I used the word inverse in that poem too.
You could have.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. We're just about out of time. Is there anything else you want to tell the audience, or the TV audience, or the studio audience before we wrap up?
Nope.
Nope, that was it. Thank you so much
Thank
for coming
you for
tonight.
having me.
And if anybody wants to get a hold of Judy, we've already got our websites, and here you go. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Salut.
Salut.